Welcome back to Gaffers Salon. I'm John Roach, Gaffer here in New York City. Straight off the top, thanks to my shopmate Chris Fisher of Daring Lighting for letting me invade his side of the space just to spread out a bit so we could talk about this line of Godox No-Lid. No-Lid is their professional line of lights. They started with the Bicolor series, and it surprised me. One of my most popular reviews was for this Godox 600 Bicolor light. And it made a lot of sense after I started thinking about it. It is an exceptional value. Out the door, this light was about $1,800. And if you wait around, like I did, you could find them for $13, $14, $15, $99. So since the review, I've added 3 more. So I now have 4 of these 4x4 Bicolor mats, and they are exceptional value. Now, the Bicolor line did not have built-in CRMX in the ballast, so you had to add a dongle, but the color metrics were really quite good. And so the 4x4 really became a hero for me. Now, this is not the OEM egg crate, or LCD as we call it in New York, light control device. This was made by Andre in the Ukraine. I think his company is Grid to order. I'll drop a link. Grid to order. And Andrew Locke turned me on to him. And he makes really decent egg crates at a very fair price. I believe these were about $325 on the 4x4s, which is significantly less than if you went to Honey Crates or DOP Choice, etc., and asked them to make you a custom 4x4 egg crate for this. So Andre already has the sizes for these, so you can just email him, say, hey, I want an egg crate. This is 40 degree. It's got nice deep cells. The OEM egg crate's okay. It's included free. It's very much like any other that you see on the Aperture Dome 150 or Amaran or Nanlite ones. They're not great, right? But they're a free included item. But I wanted to step up my game and you know, really have a nice egg crate. So typically what I've done with all of my matte lights, this Godox Bicolor only came with 1 diffusion, kind of like a full grid, maybe between a half grid and a full grid. So I have my buddy Jason over at brooklynsoftlight.com make me up whatever I want. So typically I carry the usual suspects: quarter, half, full grid, magic cloth, and sometimes half soft frost. And that's easy enough to do. On a 4x4, you're looking at $70 to $90, depending on which diffusion. And he can make those for any matte light that you want. Softbox, etc. And there are other places too, the Rag Place. There are a number of places that'll make you diffusions, custom diffusions. And so I just roll those all into my price point. And I do that with all the mats. So we have the 600 watt case out here. We've got the 400 by case, which is the 2x4, and the 200 by, which is the 2x2. Those are the 3 sizes that were launched in the Bicolor fixtures. No CRMX in the ballast. And this is the ballast right here for the 600. And as we step up into the RGBWW line of lights, we go from a 600 by, and this is what they're calling the 800R, which is the full color RGBWW version. And it has a bigger ballast. And like Godox has been I've been really impressed. They keep improving their build quality, which is amazing for a company that also is trying to keep their prices as low as possible. Right, so sometimes you don't, you expect this like kind of half-assed thing at that price point, but I keep seeing improvement after improvement through each product that they come out with. So I'm impressed with their ability to sort of really hone in on the ratio, say, between cost and value. And you know, the sort of cost benefit analysis, you know. And I am very much like Andrew Locke in Melbourne, Luke Servald in San Francisco. We all have very similar client bases, right? We're not doing big feature episodic TV shows. We're in that documentary, corporate, industrial, low budget feature, that kind of a world, right? So the prices of lights really become a much bigger factor because we're dealing with typically lower and lower budgets. As I look at the budgets I've been getting, typically 10 years ago versus today, they are much lower. We have less crew, less money, generally speaking. So the more stuff I can bring to the party for the same budget, the better off I am. So like I've said in previous videos, I'm always looking for value, right? Now look, we know Light Gear light matte spectrums, particularly the new line that came out. Those are awesome lights. but they are not anywhere close to this price point, right? They are significantly higher. If you're going for a 40 by 40 inch light matte Spectrum 8, you're looking at close to 10 grand, right? So that's just in a whole nother ballpark. But the feature guys need some of those feature sets that a light matte Spectrum has, right? They've got pixels. A light matte 8 is going to have 8 pixels. You can do gradients. You can do networking. There's a number of things you can do on those that you cannot do in any of these essentially single pixel lights, right? You don't have zones. You don't have pixel control. You can't do gradients, etc. But by and large, not something I have to do. On the rare occasion that I do have to do it, I'm going to have to sub a light matte 8 or a Spectrum 4 or what have you, right? So once again, I think the build quality continues to improve at Godox. The cases are better, I think. Here's the 800 case and the 400R case. We now have a trolley case, which is a soft case, but it's that combination of hard soft. It's got a very nice build quality to it. It's on wheels, which I think is an improvement over the 600 by, which is, it's kind of heavy. It does pack up nice and compactly, but I think having these wheeled cases is really nice on the two larger sizes. The 200 SR, which is the 4x1, is in a soft-sided case, very similar to the original Bicolor versions, and I do not have the 2x2 full color unit, but that's also in a similar kit. So if you've been paying attention, there's been this sort of influx of inflatable mats, right? We saw this from Aperture with their new Infini mats, which they sort of in a very big way made a push into the inflatable mat, which surprised me. And, to be honest with you, I was not a fan. I'm not a fan of the inflatable in that particular form factor. And the reason I find it problematic for me is that these are not lightweight mats, right? To me, the point of an inflatable mattress style is when that gives the light structure and you only need a lightweight bracket, and it sort of dramatically reduces the weight of the frame and the whole light so that you can arm that out or menace it or get it into tight, tricky spaces with minimal rigging. So for me, the people that are excelling at that are people like Pipe Lighting, right? Those fixtures are really lightweight, easy to float. It really makes sense that they're inflatable. Or other products that are inflatable, like Martin Smith collaborating with DOP Choice to come up with the Air Glow, right? That makes really good sense to be inflatable. But I struggled with the Infini mat because I didn't understand what the inflatable on a relatively heavy mat light was buying us, right? There's some argument that the inflatable part of it can stay on the fixture, fold back up, and you don't have to sort of build it, but you still have to inflate it. And it has a built-in diffusion. And that's true of other lights as well. The diffusion is built into the inflatable mattress. Now, for me, I like to have a series of different diffusions for my matte lights, right? I like to have magic cloth, I like to have quarter grid, half grid, full grid, half soft frost, etc. So for me, the poly skirt, and my argument to Aperture and to other people was, why not have both? Like, some people might really feel like the mattress is a great thing. And maybe it also makes sense when you start to get up to 8 by or 20 bys. But in these smaller form factors, if you have a relatively heavy-ish light, I don't really know that the mattress is buying you anything. I think it's actually making it less versatile. So maybe it takes a little bit longer to assemble, I don't know, versus inflating it, versus sticking on the poly skirt and the diffusion. But for me, I want to be able to change my diffusions on a matte light. Many times I want more output. Quarter is going to be enough. I just need to diffuse the emitters slightly. If you have a line of lights like, say, Intellitek's Mega Cloth, they've actually built in some amount of diffusion to their emitters, right? So they're actually, in a big 3x5 matte light, are really actually quite nice, even raw. And I've had many DPs ask me to use matte lights raw. So, I'm not sure about these inflatables. Maybe somebody can convince me why I'm wrong. It's just one man's opinion, but I was arguing that I thought the Infini mat should be available either with a standard, some kind of poly skirt, diffusion option, or you could go inflatable. To me, that would have made more sense. So Godox also could read the market and see inflatables are kind of becoming more and more popular, it would seem. So when I bought the 200 SR, when Godox sent me the 800 and the 400, I got an inflatable mattress. Now, I don't think I'm ever going to use this. I can't find a compelling reason why I'd want to use this. Maybe somebody can convince me why this would be smart. I don't know. But if you go to B&H now and you try to buy any of the full RGBWW mats, this is included as a free option. It's kind of a freebie add-on that they send you at no additional charge. So that's a plus. So I don't mind having this. You know, DP might call me and really want to have an inflatable for whatever reason. So I've got this kit. So finally got around to unpacking the inflatable. This is the first time I'm seeing it. So clearly we have the Godox inflatable mattress. Again, this was a free item when you purchase at B&H. I'm assuming Adorama, other places. They're including this as like an added benefit. Normally I think it's, I don't know, 200 bucks or something. So this is the one size for the 4x4 800R. I'm assuming these are virtually the same size, so it should also work on the Bicolor 4x4. The kit comes with an electric pump. Unlike the Infinity mats, which have a very nice battery USB powered pump, you got to plug this in. And this answers the question about the LCD. It comes with its own LCD. So clearly when we looked at those straps on the one for the box itself, those are meant to just be safety straps for going onto the frame. I don't know how much it's necessary to safety an LCD. I've used my ones from Andre. They are on there pretty secure. I've never had a concern even when it's floating overhead. But nonetheless, we know now that this is a separate egg crate. And it's got some, I don't know if this is a skirt. Yeah, appears to be a skirt for the inflatable. So you can hang it overhead and skirt it. Be curious to know if this actually would fit around the OEM box or if this is a different size. I'm assuming it's probably a different size since they're selling a separate skirt kit for the OEM box with diffusion on it. So we'll blow this up, we'll put it on, we'll take a look. So I blew up the air mattress. I'd say it took maybe 3 minutes, maybe 4. And it, it's pretty straightforward. Clearly the clear plastic side goes towards the emitters, and then this Velcros around. So we'll stick it on and take a look. All right, it's not bad, not bad. 3 or 4 minutes to inflate it, puffs up. It Velcros on just like the softbox itself does. Certainly nothing wrong with it. It's not really saving weight in this kind of setup, so I don't think that's an argument to go with it. But it's incredibly soft surface. You might see these dimples if you're dealing in a reflective object. So here's the egg crate, and one thing I noticed right away is the cells are much deeper on this than they are on the OEM regular egg crate for the softbox. So we'll throw this on and take a look, but I think this is going to be quite effective and probably give us a true sort of 40-degree cut out of this softbox. So, actually seeing this now built, I think it's actually an impressive little accessory. I'm not sure personally how much I would use it, but I could certainly see this could be a really great interview light for a lot of folks, right? You want something that's really soft and you want an effective egg crate. This is definitely going to be better than the OEM egg crate. Now, I think it's pretty much in line with what Andre made me in the Ukraine for the softbox. I put this on really quick. I could have made it a little bit nicer, but it's a pretty nice option. And you do get the accessory skirt, right? So this is roughly a 2-foot skirt that goes all around the perimeter, and you could do it either with the LCD on or without the LCD on. So when you're hanging it, you get a nice 2-foot drop down. So I think all in all, it's a pretty sweet little kit. And I don't know personally how many times I would use this, but I like this in my back pocket. Certain DPs I could see might gravitate to this. But I'm constantly coming back to the question of, I have a decent egg crate for my softbox. I like the ability to change diffusion. So I think it's just a question of personal preference. I I'm pleased that I have both options, that I probably would not have run out and bought this, but the fact that it was included when I purchased the light, I think that's really a big plus. So what about colorimetric, say, versus the bicolor going to the full color RGB? These are remarkably similar. Generally speaking, we're looking at TM30 scores between 94, 95, 96, right? Depending on if you're daylight or tungsten, we're right kind of smack in the middle of the 90s, right? And this is pretty true, even dimmed down to 1%. You get a little bit of a Kelvin shift, which I think is typical of a lot of lights down at 1% or 0.5%. You get a little bit of a Kelvin shift, but it's relatively minimal. When you start to get down at 1%, you drop maybe a point, maybe 2 points, depending on where you are in the Kelvin scale relative to SSIs. So generally we're getting around an 84 SSI in tungsten on either of these lights, and right around 74 in daylight. So I would say those are average SSI scores these days in daylight, and fairly comparable to most bicolor RGBWW lights right now are producing somewhere in the low, maybe mid 70s in terms of a daylight SSI. We haven't really seen a huge push above that until we get into like Aperture's Blair technology, where we're seeing gains up into the high 80s in daylight, like 88 roughly. But I think if you look at any similar RGBWW mat or any bicolor fixture, you're going to be right around in low 70, 72, 73, 74, something like that. So I think these hold up pretty well. So relative to primary and secondary colors, if we take a look at that, the primary colors, the red, the blue, the green, are spot on. They're exactly where they should be. So if you dial in 240 blue and you put this Sekonic spectrometer to it, you're getting exactly 240, you're getting 0 for red, and you're getting 120 for green. When we move into the secondary colors like yellow, cyan, and magenta, they're a little bit off, which is not atypical of RGBWW lights, particularly, say, for example, yellow. If we dial in 60, I'm getting 72 on the spectrometer, so we probably want to drop down closer to 49. Cyan's a little closer. We dial in 180 for cyan, we're getting about 190. And for magenta 300, we're getting 282. So all in all, I think that's pretty, pretty average for these RGBWW lights in general. Now, for me personally, I'm never using deep saturated colors. I mean, this, of course, I've got the shop lights on, I've got a vortex hitting me, so this is pretty washed out. It's at 100% at full saturation. It is a red. If we kill the lights, it's a deep saturated red. But I'm rarely working in deep saturated colors. I mean, the advantage is be able to skew slightly amber or slightly green, or something that's a much more subtle color is the big advantage for me over, say, just having a bicolor light, particularly in a large 4x4 matte light. So I think having one of these in my inventory makes a lot of sense, having a number of the bicolor units, because for me, most of my work is in that daylight tungsten spectrum. But as we get, sort of more sophisticated and you work with different DPs, since we now have the palette, the full color palette available to us, I'm finding a lot of DPs really are interested in skewing off of that straight daylight tungsten without going into heavy saturated colors. So for me, this is a real advantage. I'm certainly going to be keeping this light in the inventory. And there's a big price difference here too. You're looking at $1,800 full retail, around $3,200 to $3,300 for the full color. And next we'll take a look at, is there a significant output difference? Is this brighter because it's an 800 or because it's RGBWW? Are we actually getting less out of it? And we're just going to look right now at daylight and tungsten at 100%. I'm going to strip off the diffusion and we're just going to look at figures from the naked raw matte at a set distance, and we'll see where that lands. So RGBWW, bicolor, these are right now both at 5%. So what are the figures? So I basically just did a meter reading, a foot candle meter reading to the front of the table I have here. It's roughly 8.5 feet. So at 100%, I was getting out of the RGBWW about 531 foot candles and about 468 at 56, and roughly 442 and 393 out of the Bicolor. So in fact, the full color 800 watt is a bit brighter. Not substantially, but enough that it may make a difference to some people. So basically, it's the exact same frame. The assembly is very much the same. You can look at the review I did on the Bicolor just to sort of see the assembly process, how it goes together, etc. I've upgraded to the Sin Mill lockdowns on the back of these. This is a 2K a 2K baby receiver pin that's on the back of these frames. So they're essentially identical. The main difference is they went from the bungee system. So you basically have right here your bungee system. It just goes through here. You, of course, are putting the mat on before you attach the poly skirt, and you've got your bungee system. So the buckle on this, you've got a little locking mechanism. This, of course, is all plastic. So if you loosen this, you can tighten the buckle and then you lock it in place. The problem is doing it on this side, I can't do the same thing on the other side because it's a little too short. By doing this, I pull the mat slightly to this side of the frame, and then the buckle on the other side is going to end up being something like that. So I'm not sure the buckle system was solved perfectly. It's nice because you can't lose the bungee, but I don't think it's ideal, certainly not a deal breaker, but something to be aware of. So let's just take a quick look. This is the 600 bi ballast, right? It's pretty lightweight, dual battery plates. But one of the things that was a kind of an anomaly to me, and it left me sort of shaking my head, is the ballast itself is not IP rated, not even a little bit. The head, though, is IP rated, and the header cable. And I just thought that was really sort of a peculiar choice. Why would you make a light like that? Personally, obviously, it's to keep the price a little bit lower, but I would have liked to have spent more money and had a fully IP-rated Bicolor light. I would have loved to have seen, particularly at this stage of the game, the inclusion of green and magenta correction. And then give me 3 diffusions on the softbox. Give me a little deeper and nicer SnapGrid style LCD. And so it's 30% more than what it is now. But there is a lot of room between where Godox is sort of positioning themselves price-wise between them and the top sort of players in the market, right? The Lightgear Spectrums, the Lightmap Pluses, some of the Aladdins, etc. There's a huge gap. So I think Godox could afford, particularly in the NOLED line, which is meant to be their professional line, I think they could creep up their feature set and some of their options and compete much more aggressively with the top players in the market. So I think now if we move to the 800 R ballast, right, it's definitely bigger and heavier. But as you can see, everything is protected. This is an IP54 rated ballast. The entire fixture, header cable ballast across the entire line is now IP54 rated. So that's a pretty big deal. So the two major differences, aside from full color and bicolor, are we have built-in CRMX and we have a fully IP54 rated fixture. I think that is a pretty big deal. So you have your basic modes, your CCT, your HSI, your RGB, your gel. It has X, Y, and of course special effects. So if you go into your mode, it's a single button that makes all your adjustments. So you click to move it. When you click again, you activate, and then you can adjust your Kelvin, your intensity, and of course your green and magenta correction. When you go into the menu mode, there's some interesting options that I haven't gotten a full explanation of it. You of course have your network settings, all your usual stuff. As you go into control mode, you've got normal, low end, and high speed. I haven't got a full explanation from Godox. The manual is very vague as to what high speed means, what frame rates are acceptable. You cannot dim in high speed mode. So I am still waiting for an answer explaining these modes in a little more detail from Godox. a color space mode, and again, I haven't gotten the full explanation. Rec 709 is obvious, DC IP3, but what the difference between original gamut and correction gamut, the manual does not specify, and Godox simply sent me a copy of the manual. So I'm unclear what the difference is between original gamut and the correction gamut. So here's a look at the comparison between the 800R ballast, the 400R, and the 200SR. I do not have the other ballast for the regular 200 2x2. But one thing that becomes apparent is the 800R does not have any battery plates. It's just too big a wattage, so your only option is your 48-volt battery input on this light. And you can see we have this control, which I'm guessing, once again, is for a remote. I have to get that confirmed. That also exists on the 400, but when we get to the 200 SR, that is no longer present. So we, again, have battery mounts on the 400, and we have them on the 200, but what's missing on the 200 is the LAN connection is suddenly no longer present, that we have on both the 400 and the 800. So that's a bit of a mystery why you would not have identical feature sets on all three ballasts relative to network. One of the nice things they've done here is they've really done a nice job in build quality. This has been added and improved. The sides of the ballast, it's really nice that they've color coded your two main connections, right? Your header cable is bright orange, and where you put your power cable is orange. The others are all clearly marked. You've got your DC input, your 48 volts, and you've got a LAN connection, which you do not have on the Bicolor. So you have the ability to attach your Ethernet. On the back side of the ballast, of course, you have your locking plate to go into your clamp. And in the bottom, on the other side, you've got your DMX in and out, and a USB connection for firmware updates, etc. So I wanted to point out, this is the 2x4 Bicolor version. Of course, the RGB version is the same size. It has the same kind of grommet holes, etc. Around the outside. So let's chat a little bit about the back bracket that was designed for the Bicolor versus what they've now done with the RGBWW. So here's the two different back brackets. This is the one designed for the Bicolor, and this is the one designed for the RGBWW. So starting with the Bicolor first, not the best design. You can see that it starts with a solid metal shaft, then it goes into this thinner metal, and you can already see how they get bent. So when you open this up, right, to get it to attach to the back of the mat, right, you're gonna go into the grommet holes at the edges of the mat. So this does not push in, there's no give on this. These do not lock in place. I think their thinking was having the mat attached would keep them flush here, so you didn't need a lock. But in order to get this to attach, you kind of have to bend these rods. You got to hook that under the Velcro, under the grommet. Not the best design. And also on top of that, you've got a very stubby baby pin. Like that is not, you want more purchase on your baby pin than this little stubby pin they've got on here. So I don't think this was the best bracket. And that was on the Bicolor. So when we step up to the 2x4 RGB, we have a redesigned bracket. So first you'll see much more sensible baby pin, right? You can definitely get a good purchase on this. In addition to that, you've got this nice thick rod all the way to the end, right? And you've got a slightly redesigned bracket that now locks. So it locks into position. So as you open these four and you're getting ready to attach to your grommets on the edges of your 2x4 mat, this is actually spring loaded. So you've got a little bit of play in here. So if you can't quite get it, you can push this in. On top of that, you could break the lock so you have it down a little bit. So if you're doing it on the surface of a table, for example, right, you get all your four hooks into your grommets, you push down, and then it locks in place. So it doesn't have as much of a bow. It's not bending the edges of your rod. You've got some play here with the spring-loaded ends. And the whole mat itself is gonna lay very flat up against this. There's not really gonna be a bow. So all in all, I think this is a way superior bracket. I've talked to Godox. I said, you should make these available for individual purchase. Anybody that has the old bracket on their 2x4, I think would be well suited to upgrade to this newer bracket. So here's the mat that comes with the RGBWW version. It's got a little bit of a snap grid style to it. I think it'll hold its shape better than the one that came with the Bicolor version. It's not as deep as I would like. I wish the cells were, you know, another almost twice as deep, a little closer to what the one Andre made for me in the Ukraine. But it's perfectly functional, and it may be really well suited to a lot of folks. So we're left with these straps, which is perplexing. I'm guessing they could go back around the frame. It seems like you could probably get this to go around the frame as like a, let me see if I can get it. Yeah, I guess that could be kind of a safety. A couple other accessories to point out that the Bicolor and the RGB have. They do all have lanterns. So they're not round lanterns. They're sort of almost pyramid shape that can attach. You lose all this and it goes right on the mat itself. And they're actually quite nice. I haven't got the one yet for this to show. But again, another super affordable accessory. Also, if you look around the side, this softbox has male Velcro. So they sell an accessory skirt kit. So you can attach a skirt to this, which I think is a really smart idea. I might actually go and put Velcro on my Bicolors just so I can use that accessory skirt kit. So before I jump into closing thoughts, I'd sort of finished recording everything, and then Godox got back to me with a bunch of information. Not everything. Part of the problem when, you know, I'm dealing with Godox and sometimes with a variety of Chinese companies is I'm usually dealing with a marketing person, not necessarily someone that is really well versed in the technical aspects of the menu systems and all that, and also someone whose first language is not English. So I have to be pretty patient. So I don't have answers yet to what the difference is between original gamut, correction gamut. Like when you get into the control menu and you've got normal and low end and high speed, what differentiates those? If you're shooting in normal mode, are you limited to 240 frames a second, 120 frames? You know, what is the limitation of normal mode? When you bump up to high speed mode, what is that giving you? Okay, we know you can't dim in that mode. So there's a lot of unanswered questions about actually what those modes are. So if I find out, I'll drop them in the comments for this video. I did find out that the Godox reasoning for putting the LAN connection, the Ethernet connection, and the port for a future remote for the 400 and 800, but not any of the other smaller fixtures, their thinking was the bigger fixtures might play on episodic TV shows, features, etc., whereas they felt the smaller fixtures were more prone to play on smaller sets and that Ethernet wouldn't be necessary. But in my book, if you're making a professional line of lights, look, we use, on a feature film or an episodic TV show, you're using all different kinds of matte lights. So why you would want to limit that to just your two largest lights, I think it was kind of a mistake. I think they would have been much more well suited to have all the same feature sets in all their ballast. But, you know, one man's opinion. They did tell me that the header cables, so the header cables for the 800 and the 400R are interchangeable, and they're going to offer, they're not yet listed at B&H, but there will be a 5 meter and a 10 meter. So roughly, what is that, 16 point something, 4 feet, and one twice as long. So that's a good amount of header. It's still unclear how much header. I haven't heard what the limitation is on the maximum run of header. So that's still a little bit TBD. There are two interesting new accessories that I just stumbled across on the website. One is a back bracket for the 800R, and that sort of grabs the frame, the top and the bottom, and it comes out and it has a locking clamp so you can articulate the big 800R. Whether it's cross-compatible back to the 600 by, don't know that yet. Compatible back to the 600 by, don't know that yet. Because what I've been doing is using sort of a baby pin to 2K/baby receiver lockdown with this ball mount. And this has been working reasonably well. There are a number of brands. This is a cheaper impact one. Kupo, I think Matthews. There are a number of companies that make this. One of the problems is I've now bought 3 different brands, and where the way the ball connects to this bottom receiver here is there's a hex screw inside here that screws it in. The problem is that sometimes will come loose. So even though you're locked down, this can suddenly start spinning. So I think my solve is going to be some spot welds on this, so I can be sure that'll never happen. I mean, I tried Loctite, but even with that, sometimes in a certain position with the right amount of torque, it can come loose. And then we'll see how the back bracket is. And some people, it's a bit of a love-hate. Some people really love this center back mount point, which is a 2K stud or a baby receiver. I like it because it sort of equalizes the weight. You're not all off to one side. Other people, like Andrew Locke down in Australia, he decided he wanted to have custom made his own frame with the side pin. So, you know, a lot of it's personal preference. So we'll see if the back bracket makes it any easier. If it's a good accessory to have, I don't know. I have not seen it yet. The other accessory, which I thought was really quite interesting, was specifically designed for the 200 SR. So the SR is the 200 watt, 4 foot by 1 foot mat light. And since this is not like a light gear light mat that's sort of on a hard backing, it is a flexible mat. So they've designed an inflatable tube that mat can go into, and I think that could be really, really interesting. Don't know price, but I'm guessing you already have the light, so you're really just buying the inflatable tube. So I'm imagining that's going to be a very affordable option. And since I own 2 of them, I could see that would really, really be a cool thing to have. So that's probably down the road in a separate review. And lastly, the big question I've asked a couple times, I've not got a real answer yet, is how Godox, and in particular, the lights we use, which are generally in the no-lid line, what are they doing about repairs and service in North America, in the US, in the EU, Australia? And I've not got a clear answer on that yet. So I think that's, you know, a big concern for people more and more, right? A lot of people have been struggling with turnaround times. Apertures have been really trying to revamp their whole system. They've made a lot of progress on that. Calvin Lighting out of Norway reached out to me and said, like, who's good in the US? Like, who would you recommend? I had suggested Lux Lighting. They've eventually now partnered with Lux. Lux is Mike Bauman's company. So there's offices and headquarters, I guess, in LA, New York City, and down in Atlanta. So I've been really impressed. Lux has really spent a lot of time growing their service and repair, right? So they keep adding more and more brands as time goes on. Calvin just joined up. There are others. And I think those are kind of great central points in the US, you know, East Coast, West Coast, down South. So I would think that would behoove Godox maybe to get lined up with Lux. And there are other, you know, here in New York, there are other service centers that repair lights. They're schematic. There are a number of people. So I think getting these manufacturers like Godox to realize the importance of having these localized repair centers to get these turnaround times, these repair parts stocked, et cetera, is super, super important. So closing thoughts. Right here, I've got my trusty LightMatte Spectrum 2L. And I have to say, when this came out in 2019, very, very impressive color metrics. But the Godox lights are at least as good, if not better, than the color metrics that you're getting out of the 2019 Spectrum. They're very close. I find when very dimmed down at like 1, 2, 3%, these have a greater Kelvin shift, a greater DUV shift. Relative to TM30 scores, they're pretty close. SSI scores, very, very close. Couple points difference here and there. And this was, you know, a nice form factor. It is a 100-watt unit. And these are still available to buy new, but they're well over $4,000. So when you look at something like the Godox 4x1, it is twice the output. It has color metrics that are just as good, if not better. So I think at $1,100, that becomes a real incredible value, right? Nothing wrong with the Spectrums. Of course, this can do pixel gradients. It can do things that the Godox unit cannot do. And when we step up to the most recent 2025 Spectrums with all their improvement relative to low-end dimming and the options in the ballast and all that, very impressive units, but 2-3 times the price of most of what we're talking about here, right? So I think all in all, highly recommend virtually any of these matte lights by Godox. And I don't know if this is true for other people, but you know, 5, 6, 8 years ago, every job I did had several airy sky panels. You know, we still had Kino flows around. And over the years, particularly in the last couple years, I find myself using panels less and less and less. Now, I'm not a big feature guy, so I'm not rigging 12 of them up in a condor on a crane. But, you know, typically we would use those sky panels with a softbox, etc. But they were very, very heavy. And because the mats weren't quite as bright, now we have mats that are 600 watts. We have a 2x4 that's 400 watts. And these are much, much lighter weight. And even compared to a cob light, right, once you stick a big softbox on, you've got a tremendous 4 or 5 foot, sometimes more depth. So to have something like a 4x4, which is only this thick, for me in New York City in small little apartments when we're doing doc interviews or corporate offices or what have you, having something that has a tremendous amount of output in a relatively shallow footprint is really, really an advantage. So I have moved very heavily into a lot of matte lights. So, you know, we always put paid endorsement at the beginning of these reviews because typically, like with the 800R, Godox would send that to me for free. I get to keep it or sell it after the review. That's kind of what keeps the channel going. And so we always state that because, of course, that could sway one's opinion. And it's up to you guys to decide about that. But I typically only review things that I feel would be an interesting addition to my inventory lineup. There are products I turn down that might be great for other people, but don't particularly appeal to me. So I really try to gravitate to products that I think are going to really expand and be a benefit or an extension to what I already have in my inventory or replacement for something that I already own. So when I first did the review on the 600 by, I really, really loved it. And I thought, again, it was that sweet spot of feature set versus price and value. When I thought about expanding my line, these new RGBWW mats really seem like a great price point. I think particularly the 4x1 might be the sweet spot in the whole lineup at $1,100. So I went out on my own dime. I bought 2 of the 4x1s. So that gives me an advantage over my Spectrum 2Ls. I've got twice the output, slightly larger form factor. I still take out my 2Ls. I still love them. I have a variety of accessories for them. And those times I need to do a gradient or a split pixel, whatever, those are really, really useful. And then the 2x4 went on sale Black Friday, 2x4 Bicolor for $6.99. I mean, that is just insane low price for a 2x4 400 watt bicolor matte with really decent color metrics. And again, improved that, got a better LCD, got more diffusions, and then I've expanded into 2x4 RGBWW fixtures. I've got one of the large 4x, and then all my IntelliTech product. So it's really, really, I think, a nice offering from Godox. I think they have made significant incremental build quality improvements every time they've launched a new product. So we see all that in the way they've redesigned the ballasts, in the back brackets, in the LCD, etc. I think they've done an outstanding job. So anyway, love to hear your thoughts. I also want to point out we have a member survey going on right now in the Facebook Gaffers Salon group. So if you haven't filled that out, we'd appreciate it. If you do, it takes 6-8 minutes to fill it out. Sort of gives us an understanding of what people like, what they don't like, where they sort of want to see Salon maybe go in the future, what features they might like to see added into the group. And Astera is sponsoring the survey. We are giving away 2 complete 4-light Hydra panel kits with a runtime extender. So we have 2 of those. They'll be given out randomly to 2 people that fill out the survey. The survey is going to be out, depending on when I put this out, another 3-4 weeks. And it doesn't matter where in the world you are, if you're in India or Iceland, we will get it shipped to you free of charge. And I'd appreciate it if you go to Salon, fill out the member survey, and I'll see you over in Salon. Thanks for watching.